Gilded Descent. This beautiful figure study in 2022 National Image Competition of the Professional Photographers of Canada received the highest score of excellence. In fact, it was scored an excellent by all 5 judges. It was part of the loan collection and also received the Judges' Choice Award. It was also declared the best in its class. Today, let's find out from the maker how it was created. Welcome to Award-Winning Images Explained. My name is Manpreet and I am your host. Susie O'Connor is a small-town lady from Alberta who is recognized internationally for her fine art and figure studies. She grew up exposed to exciting images working alongside her father in the family portrait studio business, which she eventually took over. She focused on creating stunning portraits for commissioned clients, and when she is hiking, camping, or globetrotting, captures incredible landscapes that surround her. She then distilled her passions to the study of human figure, creating spectacular fine art and bodyscapes. She is a master photographer with over 20 years behind the lens and a very involved executive member of Professional Photographers of Canada, also known as PPOC. It is my honor to get a chance to talk to Susie about her award-winning image, Gilded Descent. Welcome, Susie.
Thank you for having me, Manpreet. This is exciting. Exciting to talk about our work.
It is. So tell me, Susie, what was it like growing up in a photography family? And how did that influence your photography today?
I get that question a lot. Especially being in a small town, and everybody, knew my dad as the photographer of the family. We started out. So I was 14. Actually, this was his second career, and I dug my heels in as a 14-year-old would, and I was not interested in photography, but I had to do all of the, the sports photos, the school photos, all of those kinds of things. And I know he was just honing my skills and that kind of repeat, get used to everything sort of teaching. And it wasn't until my sister-in-law got pregnant. I was 24, something. And she got pregnant, and that was my first inkling. That was my first time I wanted to create a beautiful portrait instead of just getting paid to shoot. And she was my inspiration. That was the beginning of my career.
So for 10 years, from 14 to 24, you were like just...
Yeah, I just did it. I did it. It was a paycheck. It was fun. It was fun, but it wasn't my passion as it is like now. It's my passion, and before it was my job.
So when was it that you took over the studio?
Oh, we were partners for a number of years, and it was probably only 5 years ago now that I completely took over. Or he retired. Yeah. 5 or 6 years ago, probably.
Yeah. And where in Alberta are you exactly?
So I'm in Cold Lake, Alberta. So that's a tiny city, about 3.5 hours northeast of Edmonton. And we're right on the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. We don't have, and it's our closest city. So we're quite a ways away. And I think that my dad being a national award-winning photographer, he was very recognized in our community. And so for me to break into photography, when I finally decided this is what I wanted to do, it was a little intimidating. I coasted for 10 years, just, clicking the shutter. And when I actually, found that passion and the fire to do it, I had to go like 0 to 100, because I had to be great. I had to be as great as my dad. Yeah. And so there was a few years that it was just a lot of shooting, a lot of work. And it was before all the online education. And so I got a lot of my education from the Professional Photographers of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
In that time,
and you are today very involved with PPOC, as well as you are a very, very well recognized figure in PPOC itself. You have won number of awards and accolades for yourself. So I think we will talk about the association with PPOC a little later. Right now, I want to get into your stunning award-winning image, Gilded Descent. Yeah. So what was the inspiration behind this image? How did you create this? Was it for a client? Was it for yourself?
We'll circle back to the association, but it's funny how it threads through kind of everything that I do. The Gilded Descent I created for myself. It was a point in time where the world was quite ugly. We were, I don't know if I can say the C word on here, but we were going through something as a planet that was not comfortable, and I really wanted to bring beauty back into my life. Mm-hmm. I've always been passionate about light and shaping light, and figure study work was how I found a way to be able to do that wasn't for a paid client, that wasn't just somebody that I love my clients. I love photographing my clients, but the time that it takes to create one piece, a client would never just lay down and, for half an hour while I tweaked the lights and made it perfect. So it was, anyway, that's how my figure study work started, was during the pandemic. I just wanted to create beautiful work and share it with the world and bring just beauty back in.
The association with PPOC, you wanted to talk about it in terms of how it got you into figure study, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So, in the Professional Photographers of Canada, you can become accredited in many different genres of photography, and because I've always loved light, I'm accredited in boudoir photography and high school seniors and newborns and maternity. And maternity and boudoir are ones where I'm really dealing with a lot of skin and light and beauty and and I thought, well, if we do something like I say we, because I still speak in terms of a team with my dad as my partner, but if I try to create a figure study accreditation and challenge myself, I always find it fun to challenge myself and learn new things, and that was an opportunity that I saw, and so I went after this accreditation, and with that you have to submit 10 images of 10 different subjects, generally speaking. So I needed to go out and find people that were willing to bare their souls and their bodies, and I have a lot of very good friends, and I also was very interested in representing many different body shapes in my work, and so that's how it started. So PPOC was really the inspiration for me to challenge myself to create this beautiful work and all these different pieces that I've done, and Gilded Descent was one of my my favorites. I mean, I have so many favorites, but it was one of my favorites.
So this was your final image that really won the awards and the accolades. But tell me, before even the model stepped into your studio, there must have been preparations from your side that you made. What did you have to go through to prepare for the shot? Was this in your mind preconceived that you're going to create something like this, or was it experimental? Did you have to prep the model and yourself and your studio before she came in, or tell me about that?
So just know that I don't deal with models. Like, I don't deal with paid models.
Okay.
I've seen them in action. It's amazing. I would love to work with models, paid models. But again, being 3.5 hours away from a major center, I don't have models at my fingertips that I can bring in for an hour. I would be paying them for an entire day to come and, experiment. And also, many of these images, they are just experimental. This is me playing and finding light, and I probably would feel a lot more pressure if I was paying somebody by the hour to do that. So what I did was I called up some friends, told them what I was doing, and asked them if they wanted to be a part of this project that I was working on. And to my surprise, almost every one of them were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I mean, you build that kind of trust in the community as well, when you've been in business for almost 30 years. Yeah. And so I spoke with my models, and let's speak specifically about Gilded Descent. So I spoke with my model, let her know that these were, so this is only one of, many images that different images that we produced. So in the most non-uncomfortable, I try to make this very comfortable for my models. So, I'll put on there'll be a nice soft scent in the room. The lights are dimmed, because you keep in mind my models are standing there, fully nude, for the duration. I do have a robe handy. I try to heat my studio so it's warm and toasty, because there's nothing worse than a model that's freezing after half an hour, because they're not doing a lot of movement either, right? So yes. So there's a lot of that, really setting the mood so it is relaxed to put my models at ease, was really my biggest goal in that would allow me to shoot longer. So I found where my challenges were in starting these images, starting this project, was I am used to being a commissioned photographer. Somebody comes in and they book me, I photograph them, and they leave, and I have a certain block of time that I set aside for them. I'm very cognizant of my time and theirs, and so I really had to slow this down and not rush the process. So if I wasn't getting the light just the way I wanted, I just had to step back and breathe and think, because we know as creatives, we're using our brains for the creative side, but we have to get the technical as well. Yes. And so I was, often just slow down and take it easy, and you're gonna nail this, and just take the time to do it. Was what I found, and I was initially not nervous. I'm very comfortable with nudity, but I didn't know how my models would feel. Again, because they're not, paid models. And so I found that I was rushing a little bit for them initially. So after, a couple of reviews from my friends, after the fact, saying that they had an amazing time and the images they were so happy with, and it was much easier than they had anticipated, that just gave me the permission to take my time and not worry so much about their comfort, because they were very comfortable.
I think it's important to have the model comfortable and have the studio toasty. You don't want to be photographing goosebumps, you know.
No, well, for sure. That's not the idea. And I mean, we know even from shooting outside or what have you, as soon as a model is chilly, they're like stiff, everything kind of tightens up, and you try to get them to relax, drop your shoulders, and it's difficult. So it was very important for me to set the scene in a to make it very comfortable, and then I mean even down to like bring big fuzzy socks and slippers, and just and bring some tea with you. I mean, a lot of the shooting I was doing in the winter as well. I mean, it's continued now, but initially it started in the winter, and it's cold in northern Alberta. So, so it was important.
And did you have help, or were you by yourself?
I was by myself. Help would have been amazing. If I could just stand behind the camera and say, hey, can you put a block under her shoulder here, or twist her up here, or hold that knee in place. But it's a very intimate process for sure.
Yes.
And it just didn't seem right. I was on my own for most of them. Yeah.
So what did your setup really look like? Talk to me about, where the model was, what kind of lights you used, what kind of camera, lenses, the technical stuff that you photographers love to talk about.
The tech. So, I mean, I do have a full studio. This one particularly was shot on a black background, raised up on a table so that she wasn't on the ground. The ground is cold. It's, for me to be able to change my angles is more difficult. So we have her raised up on, and it's actually a massage table, so it's comfortable. I had the light coming from the back. Almost all of many of my figure study images and my bodyscapes are with rim light as opposed to light straight on. So you can see in the background, there's a little like a light stand back there. So I do have the light, instead of coming from the sides, where often I'll have it coming from the sides, I had this one coming from kind of high up, shooting down, kind of skimming across the body, not coming straight down onto the body, just so that you can capture the swells and the ripples and the flows.
So was this a softbox? Is this strip light?
Oh, so it's a strip light with a grid, generally speaking. I'm usually shooting with strip lights with grids, maybe a little fill sometimes, not in this one. I don't think there's any fill in that. And the grids, just because the lighting, it's so exact, and so a grid really helps to direct the light exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah.
What else do I shoot with? Canon. This one was the 5D Mark IV. I've since got the R5. I'm very excited about that. It's lovely.
Yes.
So Canon 5D Mark IV, shooting with, I mean, my f-stop was probably 5, 6, or 8. I like to shoot a little higher because I'm often wanting the entire image in focus. Where when I'm shooting, my regular clients, a portrait session, I'm shooting with a lower f-stop. But this I brought it up a little higher. I shoot with Godox lights. I love them. Real game changer for me. Upgrading to those. I'll give Strobe Pro a shout out. They have been fantastic. They are so nice. It's so nice to be able to adjust lights on right from my camera. Yeah. I'm telling you, especially with this, it's so exact. And my step count was very good, I will tell you, initially. So, and it's nice. It was nice to get them exact. And I use a light meter as well, just to make sure that my readings are where I want them to be. If I want them to be a stop different, I can create that. If I want them to be exactly the same, I can create that as well. I know light meters are, maybe a thing of the past
Sekonic?
now, but
You have a Sekonic?
It's
probably.
It's old. It's black and it's old.
Okay.
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah. What about lens? What lens did you use?
For this one,
Mm-hmm.
I probably used my 70 to 200.
Okay.
I probably used my 70 to 200. I'm not, for these shots, because it's just this tiny piece of the body, I don't want to be like right up in their in their faces or their business. So I'm still back a little further. It's what I shoot with most of the time, I would say.
Yeah, and it also gives a very good perspective, very flattering perspective.
Yes, yeah, it's not wide and...
Yeah. And were you on a tripod or were you handheld?
Handheld.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time with the tripod. I feel very restricted. I understand it, and I admire photographers that work with a tripod.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very restrictive, and my mind, it's all over the place. So I'm shooting this, but then I'm seeing something else over here, and then I'm shooting this way, and I would find that a bit tricky. Nice. So yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. So. Yeah. Backdrop, lights, camera, lens, yeah.
So obviously no fill, and
no.
Black backdrops. Was it like just a black paper?
No, it's a material. It's a beautiful. I don't know. You can shake it off. Things don't stick to it too much. Okay. I find that really important. Is like black paper is fantastic, but it's the ripples and stuff sometimes I'm not a fan of for paper.
So is it something like velvet cloth?
Almost, but it's not. It's something that, like, if you were going to invest in a black material, you would want to make sure that it's something that it doesn't. A lot of stuff doesn't stick to it. Right. I don't know what the material is, but it's handy for that, because my dog comes to the studio with me every day. I mean, it would be a disaster. So, yeah.
So you've got a very beautiful sheen to this image. How did you achieve that sheen, and how did you get those amazing droplets?
Okay, so this is interesting, because this was a learning experience for me. Mm-hmm. I know there's many different ways to do water droplets. Mm-hmm. This is the way that I did it. So what I do now, in the beginning it was a mess, but what I do now is I'll have the model oil themselves up and get into position, and then I'll use a really light spray mist bottle. So it's constant, and I just can kind of spray it up in the air, so it just sort of falls gently down. Mm-hmm. I have found that works very well for me. If I was to give anybody advice on using it, for sure keep it warm and keep your water warm. Try not to spray freezing cold water on your poor models. But in this before, you can probably see it in the final as well. But in this before, you can see that when she put the oil on, she was sitting up, and then she laid down, and you can see the spots where the oil is missing. Yeah. And so that's something to remember. The other thing that I find too is when I have somebody put oil on and I'm photographing a certain area, like, okay, maybe I'm going to photograph the tummy, and so they're oiled. It's never enough. I always tend to be like, oh, I wanted this extra. I wanted a little bit more of your leg or a little bit more of your rib cage, and it's a very obvious transition. If you've ever shot with water and oil, if you don't have that on a part of the skin, it's flat. Yeah. So so I just try to get them to put more on, and I can touch up the spots as well, right. But put more on. Cover more body area than they think they need, and that includes the side, like the front side of the hip. I might be shooting the belly, but that side of the hip is in there too, right? So so it's important to try to get it everywhere. And I just use a constant mist spray bottle. I bought it at like a craft store or something.
So the clothing that they're wearing when they come in, do the marks left by the clothing ever create a problem?
Well, I'm very clear with my models to not wear any tight-fitting clothing, and that most definitely includes bra and underwear. So come in your baggiest sweatpants and sweatshirt. I literally had a model show up in her robe.
Nice.
She was like, I just really hoped I didn't get pulled over. She was wearing nothing underneath it. She drove to my studio in her, I mean, you know, you're in a small town, man. She drove to my studio in her robe and her slippers, and that was perfect. There is no marks. But no, it's not something that I want to have retouched out. We just try to avoid them altogether.
Good. And were there any other challenges that you had to overcome for this shoot?
Well, working with oil and water kind of for the first, I mean, I've done it a little bit, but for the first time constantly, boy, it really throws the light around. You know, everything is so much brighter. So really having to bring the lights down, really having to skim it across the skin to make sure I had detail, because there's nothing worse than a blown out image, right? Like if you go back to the final, then we can see sort of, bringing it down. Not a lot. Like there's not a lot of changes really, but enough that I have to be aware in my camera, do I have detail? It might be a little too bright, but do I have detail where I can bring that stuff back and make sure that it's not a tossed out image.
Yeah, now you've controlled the specular highlight on the skin so well.
Thank you.
You know, it's quite easy to turn this into black and white, but what you have achieved with color is absolutely stunning.
This image is gorgeous in black and white, and I really kind of hummed and hawed, and it was really when I found this bronzy tone to the skin that I just fell in love, and that was it. I knew it was going to be a color.
So
image.
tell us about this bronzy effect. How did you achieve this from the before? How did you get it to the after?
Right. So I mean, I have many presets that I've purchased over the years in Lightroom, and it was really just a matter of going through and finding something that was sort of interesting, and then just adjusting and playing from there. So full disclosure, I'm not a tech person. Well, clearly, probably don't even need to full disclosure. It's obvious. I'm not really a tech person. So I have retouchers that do my retouching for me, and then I finish the work. So I'm not taking out light stands and removing, adding edges to backdrops. I'm not doing that kind of thing. They're retouching the skin. I mean, now this one didn't need it because it was intentional to have the droplets. But on any of my images with the skin, that's not work that I'm doing, and I'm very proud of my retouchers, and they do a beautiful job for me. And then I just go through and I finish them. So I add just that little sparkle, that little touch of me, so that it's me kind of at the beginning and the end is the goal.
They have done an amazing job, or you have done an amazing job, even if it's a preset.
Well, and I think that anybody that uses presets for artwork, it's never, one button push and wow, that's great. It's one button push and oh, there might be something there, and then playing until you get it to a point where you want it. And I remember this was at a point where I thought I loved it, and it was the day before my competition, and I had to send it in, and I was like, oh, right at the last day, I'm like, no, a little more contrast, a little more zing, and it just made it so much better for me. So I could play with this image tomorrow and change it up again. And I think that we have the freedom when we're photographers to be able to do that.
And this image got 5 excellent from the 5 judges. And incidentally, it also competed with your other image, which also got 5 excellence.
Yeah.
Right?
That was unreal.
Yes.
It was massive massive honor. And of course, our judging is all anonymous. And my two images looked very different from one another, so that was also nice. But I mean, of course, it's the highest possible score you could get, which was super exciting. It's the highest score I've ever gotten, and to have it twice in one competition, to have them competing for the top prize was wicked.
But I think this got the edge because it got the judge's choice as well as it was declared the best in its class.
Yeah. It came out on top. I think it was they both got the 5 excellence, and then this one got judge's choice, and then I guess when they're judging and they put them all up together, then they decide which is the most impactful, most powerful.
Yes, entering these competitions, getting awards, getting these accolades, participating in the executive committee with PPOC. But I want to talk more about the competition side of it.
Yeah.
All the accolades that you have received, how has it impacted your photography?
Well, entering competition, first of all, challenges you to be your very best. Like I said, I was in love with the image, and then the night before I was like, I got to make it better. So I think that impacts my photography because it makes me more aware of my regular client work, and noticing little details and that kind of thing. The word competition is interesting because it's so much of PPOC is amongst friends. Yeah. Right? Like we are a very big circle, very big family of photographers. And so, and because it's anonymous, but it's more of a competition with myself. I want to be better, and I want to be better this year than I was last year, and I want to submit something that is completely different than anything else that gets submitted. So I love that, and it's impacted my business aside from my photography for my clients improving. It's definitely there's notoriety in it for sure. Like my newspaper, my chamber of commerce, my local radio stations, my local internet newspaper, they all cover these amazing achievements. I'm so grateful for it. But so my clients know, usually when they're coming in the door, sort of who they're coming to see, and it might not be the work that they're hiring me for. Very few people, very many of my clients appreciate my figure study work, but very few of them engage me for figure study. Even if they're coming in for boudoir photography, they can see that now I'm different than what maybe other boudoir photographers offer, but they don't necessarily want it. They just know that skill level comes with their session. I think that's you've kind of answered part of my next question, is that how is your passion or your interest in figure study and devoting time to figure study, how has it impacted your conventionally or your regular business? It's mostly portraits, right? Portraits, boudoir, and correct,
families.
Yeah. Families, like the whole, again, small town, right? The whole gamut. Newborns, families, weddings, graduations, all the things. I do all the things. Commercial work. This is, how has this impacted? I think it's put me in a light of, being more of an artist than, and I love all my photographer friends here locally as well, but I don't want to say then just a photographer, but I think it's elevated that, how I'm viewed, if that makes sense. And I'm the same person. I'm just doing side projects, and I have really found the last 3 years, that I've done side projects for myself, like these bodyscapes and figure studies, and another series that I've been working on. And it gives back to the community in different ways as well. That it's that my clients recognize that I'm doing more than just photographing their family or their graduate. I like many pans in the fire.
Right. Now, a question about just outside of photography, rather technical side of it, photography.
Yeah.
You're photographing women, and you are a lady yourself, so that gives kind of a comfort level to the models or the ladies who come in.
Yeah.
If there's a male photographer aspiring to expand their portfolio into fine art nudes, and how would you advise them to make sure that their models, who are women, ladies, feel comfortable in the studio, or even at the time of inviting them, checking with them, and at the time of the shoot? How can they feel comfortable and secure with a male photographer? What advice would you give them?
I think that's a great question. So I do have male photographer friends that photograph nudes. I was just speaking with a friend the other day, and he doesn't have anybody else in the studio with him. So let me back up for a minute. So when I photograph men, because I photograph male figure studies as well, when I photograph male figure studies, I do have a female in the studio with me, and it's a female friend of theirs in the studio. And I also always have my staff on they work here as well on the other side of this door. And so I photograph during the day for those sessions. And that's just to put me comfortable, put me at ease. And they've been wonderful. My sessions have been wonderful. For a male photographer photographing female figure studies, these are only recommendations, legalities, whatever, I don't know about that. But I would make sure that you're meeting with your client first, your model, whoever it is, client, model, whatever. As an upstanding male photographer, you need to make sure that you have a good vibe with that person, and that there's trust on both sides, I think. She needs to feel comfortable, but you need to feel comfortable working with her. And then, but I mean, like I said, for myself, I actually have them for males, I have them bring a female friend in. I mean, you, as a male photographer, you could do the same. You could have a female, and she could bring another female friend with her. But if she wasn't comfortable with that, that's fine, as long as you feel comfortable with that person.
Yeah, I guess you could even have a female assistant or a female makeup artist present there, so that
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I had their friend was because I wanted them to be comfortable.
Yes.
In this, right? So because you're working with nudes, I didn't want just my assistant, hanging out in the back of the room. I thought that would probably make them feel more uncomfortable, because we did have a connection, so we did have a vibe, and that was great. But I just, for myself, I want to work with somebody that will bring a friend in with him. And if they just didn't want to or decided not to, then I just wouldn't do the job, personally. At this point, you know.
So Susie, where can our viewers see more of your work, or how can they reach you if they wanted to?
Yeah. So I have, of course, my regular business, Images Studios, so imagesstudios.com. And then my art nude site is SuzanneCatherine.com.
Okay.
It's my given name. So Suzanne, SUSANNE, and then Catherine is CATHERINE. I'll spell my
Okay, I'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, put them in there. I'd love to hear from people what they think about the work. I do, I sell that work sort of like globally now. And but I always love to hear what people think about the work, or if they wanted to be a model, if they were interested in working with me. I'm very open to that too.
Also, viewers or anybody interested can actually go and purchase prints from you, and
Right from the website.
ah.
Yeah. So this started out as a side project, right? As we spoke about, it started out as just basically a personal challenge for me, and just a goal, and I fell in love with it. Like I just loved every session. Just got better and better and better. I was like, this has to be on people's walls. This is so
Yes.
beautiful. And so so then I created a second business.
No, your work is absolutely stunning, and
Thank you.
anybody who goes to your website, I am sure they are going to at least spend an hour or two
Yeah.
just absolutely mesmerized
Yeah.
by some
Just poke around
amazing
and
work.
enjoy. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Susie, for your time,
Yeah.
for your expertise, and for sharing the how the image was created.
Yeah.
And if you've enjoyed this talk, make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. We talk to award-winning photographers regularly and find out how they created their amazing images. So, thank you all.